Hi everybody, just before we start this week's show, we have an exciting announcement to make.
And that is that the National Comedy Awards are coming up very soon, and the great mothership that is QI, and the mother herself that is Sandi Toksvig. How creepy, I don't know how she'd feel about me calling her my mother, but that is Sandi Toksvig, are both up for awards.
That's absolutely right. QI is nominated for Best Comedy Panel Show, and Sandi, or Mummy as I call her, has been shortlisted for Outstanding Female Comedy Entertainment Performance. We think that both are deserving winners, so if you would like to go and vote for QI or for Sandi in those awards, go to qi.com/vote. So easy to do, and so important that you get your vote in and help us destroy all comedy competition, which, as we all know, is the point of comedy.
Yes, exactly. Flatten all that comedy. And if you do want to remind yourself why they're the best, all of QI is now available on BBC iPlayer. Go and watch a few episodes and convince yourself that they both deserve to win. That's qi.com/vote. Do it now.
On with the show.
On with the show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of No Such Thing as a Fish, a weekly podcast coming to you from the QI offices in Covent Garden. My name is Dan Schreiber. I'm sitting here with Andrew Hunter-Murray, Anna Toshinsky, and James Harkin. And once again, we have gathered round the microphones with our 4 favorite facts from the last 7 days. And in no particular order, here we go. Starting with fact number 1, and that is Anna.
My fact this week is that the first female composer to become a dame used to tie herself to trees to improve her posture.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. Was her posture originally too bent, so she stood next to a tall tree, or was it originally too straight and she stood next to like a weeping willow or something to bend herself over?
She tied herself to one of those really droopy branches.
Yeah.
I believe it was to the trunk.
Oh, okay.
She didn't specify. I think she left it for us to assume. This was an amazing woman called Ethel Smythe. She was writing music and conducting and creating, operas and all sorts of classical music at the turn of the 20th century. And there's a new book coming out which covers her life. It's going to be called Quartet. Sounds great, coming out in spring, by someone called Dr. Leah Broad. And she read an account of an interviewer who went to meet Ethel Smythe at one point to interview her about her music making, and she found that she was tied to a tree, and specifically to improve her posture as a conductor.
Oh, come on. No. Something went wrong. Some sort of weird sex game went wrong.
Yeah.
The interviewer, like, what are you doing? Oh, no, it's for the old conducting.
You're so right.
Come on.
She was actually a bit of a sex minx, so I reckon it was that. Yeah, but you can't admit that to the interviewer first thing, can you?
And then you have to just carry that on for the rest of your career. You just got to, people are sort of recommending trees.
Yeah.
You got a big pot plant with a thick trunk there in the orchestra pit tied to it mid-show, which is what you should do.
She's amazing.
Yeah, she is incredible. So she was very successful in her time, given how unlikely it was for a woman to be successful in composing, writing music.
What was her time specifically?
She was born in 1858. She died in 1944.
Yeah, and a lot of her most famous works will have been around the 1880s, 1890s, and the early 1900s.
Yeah, and she was prolific. She wrote so much. She wrote 6 operas, which operas are a big feat, and plus loads of chamber music and orchestral and stuff. She played for Queen Victoria and for Edward VII, and she was so ambitious that we know that she kept a diary throughout her childhood, and she wrote in her diary at age 8 that she intended to be made a peer because of her musical prowess. And lo and behold,
And she was.
That's
amazing.
It's good to have something to aim for, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because actually, when she was a child, I read that she was quite good at sports. This was on the Surrey government website, and it said, from the beginning, when she was a child, she won a bet for riding a pig, and to the end of her long life, she was a keen sportswoman.
Really?
Wow.
So yeah, that shows how keen you are at sport.
She definitely won lots of contests, and in lots of different sports. I think she was very vigorous. Picture like a good Miss Trunchbull, maybe. So she did like mountaineering, tennis, hunting, cycling, golf.
Very keen on golf.
James, she did do golf.
I must admit, most of my facts are about Woking Golf Club.
Oh,
God.
The thing is, what James actually might theoretically have a point dragging us into the golfing world is that I was looking up her damehood, which was 1923, the honours list then, and she was convinced it was because she was a member of the Woking Golf Club.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Okay.
What? And so she had friends in high places, kissing some ass where it matters.
Oh,
But-
wow.
Well, it was owned by a guy called Lord Riddell, who was a bigwig, he's a senior lawyer and a newspaper proprietor and all that sort of stuff. And he was a member of the club, and so was she. And there was a big dispute about the changing rooms,
Oh, yeah.
where the women members wanted to walk across a short route.
What?
I know. And it took them past the men's changing rooms
Oh, yeah.
to get to the women's rooms. Nightmare. And the men were very uncomfortable about this. The women walking past their changing rooms. I'm not sure if the men's changing rooms were just sheet glass in the windows or something like that. I mean, it doesn't I don't think they would have seen anything. If
It's
the men-
also, it's not like a swimming pool. It's not like you have to take your kit off completely to
You're
put your
absolutely
golf
right.
shoes on.
What are they
such a
doing
good point.
there?
Well, anyway.
What do men do in changing rooms, actually? Suddenly, it's way more suspicious for them to kick up this big fuss.
You're right.
But James, you presumably spend a lot of time in those.
You might have a shower.
Oh, there we go.
So basically, the men were uncomfortable about this situation with the women walking near their changing rooms, and they demanded that the women be banned from playing golf at weekends as a sort of proportional response. And Smythe actually told the ladies' committee, "Look, let's give the men a slightly easier ride on this one. Maybe they're just incredibly modest, and they're worried about it." And the sort of militant women, almost all of them, abandoned this shortcut route. So she basically sold out the sisterhood and gave the men at the golf club a slightly easier time. And she thinks that because Lord Riddell was maybe
I
had
see.
friends with the PM,
Wow.
he might have said, "Look, we should make this woman a dame."
Lord Riddell had a particularly tiny penis, didn't he? And he was so relieved.
It's a particularly dangerous place to tie yourself to trees as well, a golf course. Certainly
Yeah,
if I'm
yes.
playing golf, you do not want to be tied to any trees near me.
When I read her story, I've never heard of her before, but she just it's begging for a movie to be made about her life. She was a suffragette. She played a big role in composing songs for the suffragettes, but she also had rumours of affairs going on with people like Emmeline Pankhurst and
Everybody.
and Virginia Woolf. Although these are all
Yeah.
kind of rumours, and I think Virginia Woolf was the one who started the Pankhurst rumour, suggesting that they were lovers. But she spent time in jail for throwing stones. She was a badass, basically.
Yeah. I think she was in love with both of those two people. I think she was a woman who fell in love quite a lot, you get the impression, and it was sometimes reciprocated and sometimes not. I mean, Virginia Woolf wrote, when Ethel fell in love with her, she wrote in her diary, I think, "An old woman has fallen in love with me. It's like being caught by a giant crab."
Oh,
Which isn't, it's not what you want, is it?
No,
you
not
don't say
really.
yes
No.
to that.
No.
it just comes at you sideways.
So, bounces.
We should talk about the thing which landed her in prison.
Yeah.
Because this is a brilliant incident. It was in 1912. And the really cool thing is you can hear her talking about it. There was a recording made before she died. But she was saying at 5:30 p.m. one evening in 1912, relays of women produced from their muffs and handbags hammers and things like that, and proceeded to methodically smash up windows in all the big London thoroughfares. And Mrs. Pankhurst was the one who kind of opened the bowling on that occasion, so she threw a stone at 10 Downing Street,
Yeah.
and then simultaneously all over London, suffragettes and suffragists were throwing stones at various buildings, and she was one of them. So she went to the house of someone called Lord Harcourt, who had annoyed her. And she got to the target square. There was a policeman standing around, and she said, "Whose house is that? And what about that one?" And then she threw a stone through the window of Lord Harcourt. And he says, "Will you come quietly?" And she said, "Yes." And then he arrested her, and she went off to prison. That was it. That was the protest.
That's cool. Virginia Woolf said that she was the first ever woman to write an opera. And she was wrong about that, because the first woman to write an opera was someone called Francesca Caccini. And it was about 250 years before Ethel Smythe came along. And Caccini, she was amazing. She sang at the wedding of Henry IV of France, and he was so impressed by her singing that he asked her to stay in his court. And by the time of the 1620s, so the top of her career, she was the highest paid musician in the court.
Really?
This woman. And her opera, which was the first written by a woman, this is called La Liberazione di Ruggiero. And it was so good that the King of Poland heard it, and he rushed all the way back to Poland and created his own opera house just so that he could get someone to play this opera in it.
God, it was such a hassle before gramophones or CD players, wasn't it?
Spotify, yeah.
Yeah.
Had to build a bloody opera house. To be fair to Virginia Woolf, no internet for her.
No, she
so
couldn't Google it, could she?
You had to make a guess. Do you know we have mentioned Ethel Smythe on this podcast before? But without knowing it.
Ooh.
Dun, dun, dun. So, do you remember, listeners at home, and you guys, you know the Bishop of Truro, Edward White Benson, who invented the carol concert, the
Right.
Christmas carol concert?
Okay.
We've talked about him because he had this amazing family. His wife was gay and kept a diary of her 39 lesbian lovers and had lots of affairs. And we mentioned that his wife was going out with this particular woman who was then stolen by his daughter, and it was this raunchy love triangle where mother and daughter were fighting, and that was Ethel.
Whoa, that's it.
Yeah.
It's obviously a different world now for composers, female composers. But a survey was done in 2020 to see, on an average year, how many orchestral concerts worldwide were playing music that was composed by women. So in percentage terms, what do you reckon it would be?
Still
Minuscule,
really low.
I should
Yeah,
think.
it's all-
Yeah, so they
5.
They surveyed 15 orchestras worldwide who did more than 1,500 concerts and did 4,000 pieces. And what it comes out is 8.2%. So only 142 of the pieces were composed by women, which is not much more than it was in her day,
Yeah.
according to this stat from Donne, D-O-N-N-E, which is women. Don.
Your mate Don, down the
Don.
pub. I've met him, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know if he's reliable.
Done my research for me this week. It's a Women in Music charity foundation, and they did this as a big global survey to find out. And
There's that song about him, isn't there? Don, 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 don.
The problem is, I suppose, is that orchestras tend to play classical music, and it is all from the past, and almost all past composers were men, so it's so hard to sort of create a female composer from the 1800s. But certainly there should be more contemporary ones, which still aren't.
Just one more thing about Smythe.
Oh, yeah.
She once kidnapped her own opera
Oh yes.
mid-show. This is so cool. It was in Leipzig in 1906. Her opera, The Wreckers, had its debut, which is about a load of people who wreck ships. She found out there had been edits made. She was absolutely furious. She found some cuts had been made to the third act, and she walked into the orchestra pit. She took the parts off the musicians, and she took the score with her, and she went to Prague, where she thought she'd get a fairer hearing and
Wow.
get it played in
Nuts.
full.
A nuts move for someone who's achieved what no one could have really dreamed a woman would achieve at that time. God, they're putting it on in Leipzig. It
Yeah.
got standing ovation, huge deal. She storms off in a strop with all the stuff they need to play it.
I just find it so funny though that how vulnerable are classical musicians that when the paper's taken away, well, that's it. We can't do anything. We can't remember the chords like
Well, what
any
could you
other
do?
song.
It's
It's a
not like
long. It's
it's not a Westlife song.
Operas are long. Operas are long.
Oh, if you're playing a violin, you can memorize. You can memorize
Dude.
a piece.
No, they've just seen this piece. I think they're,
Bands play for 3 hours. It's
play
the same chords, guys. It's the same instruments. There's no extra
everyone,
chords.
LA. Everyone play LA. Right, now everyone LA.
There's no extra notes that classical people have that Coldplay don't have.
some-
And if you're a
Sometimes.
classical musician, if you're a classical bassoonist and you think that what you do is no more difficult than a rudimentary Coldplay song, please write to Dan, podcast@qi.com.
Yeah.
We crave to hear
Let
from
me
you.
hear. Yeah, okay.
Let
You're
the
telling
bassoon
me
meet the buffoon.
Bruce Springsteen does 5-hour gigs. You telling me you're better than him, bassoon boy?
He's been playing Oh, my God.
and also, he's been playing the same tune for
50
150
years. He hasn't got a 3-hour opera put in front of him 2 days ago. Like, bloody hell, rehearse this, and then you're going to play it in 2 nights. It's like a panic dream for any normal human being.
Dan, he would have got it first time. A quick glance, nailed it.
Got it.
Tears up the paper.
Da-da-da-da. Forget that. How do you forget that?
Da-da-da-da. Thank you and good night. Good night, Vienna.
Stop the podcast.
Stop the podcast!
Hi, everybody. We just wanted to advertise ourselves.
Yes, we're sponsored this week by No Such Thing as a Fish.
And specifically, we are sponsored by Club Fish. That is the special portal that I'm sure a lot of you know about, where we have all the real fun. It is a subscription arm of No Such Thing as a Fish, and we upload ad-free versions of the podcast, bonus content every couple of weeks. We love doing it, and we think you would love listening to it.
We don't have an offer code. But that doesn't matter because it's only $2.99 a month to get, as Anna says, completely ad-free episodes. You won't have to listen to this ever again, so that's an incentive. Also, 2 bits of bonus content at least every month, the entire archive ad-free, and you get access to the No Such Thing as a Fish Discord, which is an incredible place full of fish fans. There is so much brilliant fish chat going on with other like-minded fish people there. If you want to sign up, you can do it either via Apple or not via Apple. On an Apple device, it's probably easiest to go to nosuchthingasafish.com/Apple. If you're not on Apple, just go to patreon.com/nosuchthingasafish. The most important thing to say before we close is that the main weekly episode of Fish is and will always be completely free. But if you want a little bit more fish in your life, then why not try Club Fish?
Yes, join us. Do it now. See you there. On with the show.
On with the podcast.
Okay, it is time for fact number 2, and that is Andy.
My fact is that TV screens are cut from a massive TV screen called the Mother Glass. The Mother Glass. The Mother Glass.
The Mother Glass itself, does it work as an enormous TV screen?
I imagine it would do.
Oh, cool.
But it's so big that I don't think they've made the TV big enough.
You wouldn't be able to get out of the factory, would you?
I should say where this comes from. This comes from a brilliant Atlantic piece about TV tech. And the main focus of it was that actually that TVs are so cheap. TVs are way cheaper than they used to be. And there are various reasons for that. One is the LED panels, which are now the main ingredient in TV. They're much cheaper. And another reason is the Mother Glass. Because manufacturers are way better these days at cutting screens out of the Mother Glass. So there's much less wastage. And so that's part of the reason why TVs are so much cheaper.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, how do you make Mother Glass?
It's basically the glass. So we're talking about LCD screens, aren't we? Which are basically what your TV screen probably is today. And you've got your 2 thin sheets of glass sandwiched together. I think in between the 2 thin sheets of glass, there's like a liquid crystal thing which acts as the conductor. And so you just have this huge sheet of that glass. And I think each sheet can be dozens of feet, the Mother Glass. Yeah. And so you can cut, 10, 15 TVs out of that.
And how they make glass.
Yeah.
I don't know if they still do it this way, but I think they do. It's basically float glass. So float glass was invented in the 50s in St. Helens, near where I'm from. And the idea is, it was really hard to make flat glass in those days. But what they've worked out is you could put a load of glass on a load of molten tin. So you melt a load of tin to a really high temperature, and then you put the glass on it, and it sits perfectly on top of it, like if you pour oil on water.
Okay,
it'll just be a small film of it. And then when the tin and the glass cools down, you can just sort of peel it off, and it'll be a really flat piece of glass. And I think that's still how they make flat glass. So it certainly was 10 years ago.
That's amazing.
Researching this fact, I just came across so much new vocab. It was great. It was like
cool.
researching a foreign language.
Well, you don't watch much TV, do you, Hannah?
That's true. So there's a fab. Fabs are constantly referred to when you're talking about like high-end technological production, and these are factories in China. It's short for fabrication plants, and no one ever explains what they are because they assume if you're reading these articles, you definitely know what a fab is. So all of these screens are made in fabs. Apparently, you can spot an LCD screen making fab because they'll be very tall. They'll go up many, many stories, and they will hoist the equipment up the outside. So they have big windows on the outside where they hoist the equipment up, and then they just hoist it in to where they need it.
Cool.
Everyone in there looks like they're in hazmat suits or Ebola fighters because they have to have what you call clean rooms because it's so fine. You're working with like atomic level stuff, and when you're making these very specialized screens, you can't get a single speck of dust. So the rooms have to be what you call a class 10 clean room or even a class 1 clean room. And what that means is that you have to have fewer than 1 particle smaller than 0.3 microns in diameter per cubic meter of air. So for comparison,
Okay.
so that's class 1.
So that's is that the best?
That's the best.
Are you about to ask who cleans? Who
counts them?
And how they can ask who goes in and counts them. Yeah. Yeah, that's an 8. I've found 8 of those.
Some technician with a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
Wow.
So for comparison, the article I was reading, which I guess was written by someone in Harvard, so they compared it to Harvard Square. They said Harvard Square in Boston would be class 8 million.
Oh, right.
As in
Wow.
8
Just in
million
the air,
particles.
not even on the ground. It's
In the
just-
air, yeah, in the air. 8 million
that's
particles
grubby.
per cubic meter. This has to have 1. If there's more than 1, you shut down the factory.
Wow.
That's awesome.
My TV's got one of these. It's so annoying.
What?
Well, I think it's actually more of a dead pixel, but it's just this tiny spot, and it's absolute dead center. Everything I watch, whatever's in the middle has like a small fly on it. It's
Really?
so
But you're always
frustrating.
watching the darts, aren't you? Are you sure it's
Yeah,
not just
yeah. I got to stop joining in when I watch it.
That's
Yeah.
so funny. These, you were saying that they need to be really thin, and like part of the reason for that is because to make your glass non-reflective, you need to put a kind of film on it. So if you just have normal glass, like all the light's going to reflect off it, you're not going to be able to watch TV properly. And so they have something called non-reflective glass, and that was invented by someone called Catherine Burr Blodgett. And what she did was she basically would build up these one molecule films of atoms, and then she put another layer on and another layer on and another layer on, and so she could control exactly how thick it was going to be, and she worked out the exact thickness that it would have to be to make this glass non-reflective. It's absolutely incredible.
Wow.
The first movie that used her invisible glass was Gone with the Wind, and people said when they watched it how clear the cinematography was because the cameras had been using this amazing glass.
When was this?
Gone with the Wind was 39.
Oh, so
wasn't
it was when it was
God,
released.
that's
Sorry.
I didn't realise they could do that kind of thing.
Well,
in-
exactly, amazing,
that
right?
time.
But it was also her glass, or her non-reflective glass, was used in World War II to make periscopes as well.
Oh, cool. And I was looking into new TV innovations and just trying to see if there's a TV that I haven't seen, because most of it is kind of just permutations, isn't it? At this point, it's just like a higher, Blu-ray screen, blah 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 kind of stuff.
Why were you fired from Curry's then?
I got, if you're a TV maker at the moment, and Dan's just saying how piss easy it is to make a new TV, if I just add a permutation right into Dan Schreiber.
God.
So check this out. Samsung, and this is clever. Samsung have released a vertical TV.
They've turned a TV on its side.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now, it's very clever because why do you think they've done this?
Oh, because people film vertically on their phones.
Exactly. So the new generation of kids that are sending their videos to the TV are not getting the proper
But wait a
view.
minute, so if I buy that TV, great, my daughter will be able to watch her TikTok videos whenever she's
And
old enough
Instagram.
to.
And you'll have to watch The
I'll have to watch
Sopranos.
Countdown sideways.
No, so Samsung very cleverly have made it so that you can flip it back the right way
that is
round,
clever,
and you
yeah.
still have. I know.
I feel that's a gimmick.
I'm going to say major advanced step
innovation.
in
All right.
innovation of TV.
Okay, here's another one. In fact, this sort of links back to why TVs are cheap these days, is the TVs that watch you. Oh.
Oh,
Not such a good show as The Sopranos. Poor things.
No, it's true. The Sopranos are bored out of their fucking minds watching this guy.
Trying to rub off a little spot on his TV.
So this is a really interesting thing. TVs are smart. They're internet connected. All TVs sold these days pretty much are that. And one thing that loads of TVs do, they collect your data and they will sell it to advertisers, right? And what that means is that TVs can be sold more cheaply because they know that for the next several years they're going to be getting your data and that will be worth some money to them. Mm-hmm. So TVs are now being sold effectively for exactly what it costs to make them. And then they will sell you viewing data and they can make the money back on the long run. And sometimes the data will be sold to places like Netflix, even if you don't have a Netflix account, which I find so bizarre. And I think that might
Makes sense.
I wonder if that theoretically means that when you turn on Netflix for the first time, if you do later get Netflix, they're like, Mr. Murray, we've been expecting you.
But joke's on them, because I always make sure to only watch stuff I hate on my smart TV.
That's really interesting, because I do the same on Amazon. I only buy things I hate just to get those things.
Just screw with those algorithms. They don't know what data they're getting. It's not the truth.
I read about a very old bit of TV technology that I just had never heard of before, and it seems an extraordinary thing. But have you guys heard of phone vision for TVs?
No.
Don't think so.
So this was back in the 50s, and what it was is that this was pay-for TV. This was like pay-per-view TV. So if a movie had been out in the cinema for 2 years, they managed to get the rights to it, and they would put it on TV, and it would be the first time anyone would be seeing it on TV in their house. So how do you do pay-per-view for TV back then when you don't have the kind of payment systems and stuff that we do now?
Coin meter on the side of the TV.
There was one that had a coin meter.
Nice.
But this is more interesting in a weird kind of technological way. What they did was you would go to the channel and you would see the movie playing, but it would be completely blurry and all just didn't make, the sound wasn't there and it didn't make sense. So you could see like, oh my God, Gone with the Wind is on.
Right.
I need to get to it. And what you did was you then called up an operator and you told them that you would like to now watch this movie. It would cost $1 and they would add that to your phone bill. And what they would then do is send a frequency through the phone that would somehow play with the TV and unblur it and give you all the sound. So it was your phone and TV working together to get the frequency
incredible.
right. Yeah, I mean, it's mad. And they did many tests on it. It never kicked off, obviously, because various reasons.
Okay.
Like
If you were quite stingy, because this is definitely what I would do, especially if I was a teenager or something, do you know if you could watch the whole thing, but like the blurry crap version that didn't really make sense? Like that would keep playing?
I think so.
I would totally do
Yeah.
that and
Yeah.
just sort of try to work out. You know when you used to get like bootleg DVDs from foreign countries?
Filmed in a cinema.
Yeah, and you'd
by
watch the
Zynga.
bottom quarter of the screen and you'd only see half of their bodies.
Yeah, exactly.
I was reading about what claimed to be the first remote control, the Lazy Bones, and
Oh, yeah.
it was a remote control, and it was connected by a cable to the television, so it's not completely remote, and the operation is mechanical; it's not electronic. So when you press it now, it's a little infrared beam or whatever. These days, if you pressed a button, it activated a motor that was used to physically turn the dial
Brilliant.
on the television.
So good.
I
Feels
know.
like there should be a little hand-like thing from
Yeah.
the Addams Family turning it
Yeah.
around. On remote controls,
Yeah.
is that what your family calls those?
Yeah.
Those items. Everyone else, what do you call it?
I'd say the buttons.
The buttons.
You
That's
say channel changer.
channel changer. That's an unusual. We used to call them the magic buttons, and there was a list online of someone did a survey of what people in the UK call them, and magic buttons wasn't in the top 100, I should say. But the number one was remote. Can you guess any of the others in the top 5? We haven't said them yet.
The doofer.
Doofer, number 2.
Yes!
The word doofer originally meant half a cigarette
Oh, wow.
in the 1920s, and it came from "this will do for now." This will do for me.
Brilliant.
Nice.
Okay, so that's remote, doofer. We've got
Was
3 to
wand,
get.
was wand a thing? Like a
That's
magic...
not one that I saw.
I'd say the thing.
No, zapper, clicker, and flicker.
Jobby?
Jobby.
Jobby, you guys are so fast.
Someone's left a jobby on the arm of the sofa. No,
Yeah,
Anna.
put the jobby on the table where it belongs.
You haven't seen much Billy Connolly, have you?
Jobby, I believe, is only a euphemism for poo,
Yeah.
to my knowledge.
Okay, come on, but you use the word jobby when you can't think of the right word for something, though, right? You're like, get past that jobby over there.
Your poor housemates come home, the remote controls in the toilet again.
That doesn't make any sense.
Plunging away at it.
They were leaving poos on our tables. I never understood why.
Okay, it is time for fact number 3, and that is my fact. My fact this week is that Queen Charlotte once got seasickness while visiting an art exhibition on land.
Amazing.
What an idiot.
I can't believe we got a fact about sickness. Literally recovering from food poisoning.
Yeah,
from
James is
one day.
feeling terrible, listener, just so you know. I got this fact from a brilliant book by a buddy of ours, Edward Brooke Hitching, and it's called The Madman's Gallery, which is an incredible book, by the way. I love his books, and this is a beautifully illustrated book all about the weirdest and most quirky and curious bits of art that have been made over the course of history all over the world. It's like he's curated this really stunning book, and one of the chapters talks about this incredible thing that happened just 5 minutes walk from where we are, Leicester Square, down the road, in 1790s, in 1794 particularly, when Queen Charlotte went to see what was a giant panoramic piece of art, huge, in a purpose-built building, so that you could go out inside and be immersed by this extraordinary scene. And one that he did was a sea battle, and Queen Charlotte went to see it, and she was so immersed and felt so overcome by all the movement of the ships that she got seasick. And there's a few stories that said she vomited into her handkerchief. There's others that just say she was very nauseous.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Which handkerchief?
Was it a blower or a shower?
It must have been the blower.
It was a vomit. It was a special. Fetch the third handkerchief.
Yeah, it's interesting. She, I think the main part of the story comes from the memoirs of the man who created this panorama, whose name was Barker.
Yeah.
Robert Barker. And he wrote that Charlotte had told him that she had felt seasick.
Yeah.
At the time. There is a suggestion that he was quite a salesman and
Yes.
used to make stuff up.
Absolutely.
So there's a chance it might not be true.
Totally. There's a few accounts, though, of just like how people who went in...
That's for sure. It did happen. The people got seasick.
Yeah,
didn't
people
they?
got seasick, but also the thing was that the paintings themselves were beautiful paintings, but they were sort of presented in this way that they kind of were a bit of an illusion, that you got a bit confused that maybe something was going on and your eyes were playing tricks with you. So in the sea battle one, there was a capsized shipboat and there were sailors that were struggling in the waves. And according to one story, there was a guy who was visiting and he had his dog with him, a Newfoundland dog, and this dog saw the drowning man in the painting and leapt over the leapt over to rescue the drowning man. That is one of the stories.
Again, I think that was used in the advertising for the panorama. I think that was, whether it happened or it might have happened, but yeah, they said this is so realistic that this happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep your dogs at home.
Yeah.
Do not risk your dogs. That's so funny.
I'm imagining like the end, the end of the Truman Show, where the dog bites through the screen and he's suddenly in the real world.
Is that a spoiler?
He's been trapped. It is, yeah. And if you haven't
mega.
seen the end of the Truman Show yet, James, it's almost as old as Anna Karenina.
This building is so cool, and like Dan says, the building where he hosted lots of his panoramas. I went to it today before
did
the show.
you?
Yeah,
Great.
it's right next to the Prince Charles Cinema and the Leicester Square Theatre. You know that
Yes.
street just off Leicester Square, and it's now a French Catholic church. It's the Church of Notre Dame de France.
And you're a French Catholic, aren't you? So you just have to be taking mass.
That's how I got in. Yeah. And it's you go into the church and it's a completely round church, and you think, oh, that's interesting. It's not your classic church, cross-shaped,
Yeah, no.
and it's beautiful in there, and you can
I didn't know
really
you
imagine.
could still go in. That's
Yeah,
really
It's
interesting.
completely open every day of the week.
He actually invented the word panorama, he said, and it is worth thinking about how amazing it would have been to go into this place. It was 2 levels, and so I think he had 2 panoramas exhibiting in there at the same time.
Yes, yeah.
And it was kind of like when you go to a fairground, like one of the bit more crap rides where you just walk around it. But still, you look at the big painting on the ground floor, and then you went through a series of palette cleanser dark corridors and staircases so that you could erase that from your mind so that you could get up to the next floor and enjoy
Even
that
to
one.
get to the first one, you had to go through some weird dark corridors,
Yeah.
didn't you? And the way that it was lit was really impressive. Like, it was lit from above using natural light, but it meant that it was really realistic. And so you would kind of go through all these dark corridors, and then you'd be hit by this incredible scene.
Yeah. So
But what that did mean was that at certain times of the year, it was better than others. So, for instance, if the weather wasn't good, it wasn't that good to see.
Yeah.
If it was foggy, you probably wouldn't go. If it was raining, you probably wouldn't go.
Right.
In winter, you'd probably only go at midday. The rest of the day, it was not quite so good. And it was like £1 to go, which is not that much, but to some Londoners it was. So if you're going to spend your money, you'd go on a really good day.
But they kept putting them on. So he started in 1787, painting his first ever one, and it opened up in London in the 1780s or 90s. At the Leicester Square one, they had a new show every couple of years until 1861. So they had 126 different panoramas
So
there.
good.
It's a
Incredible.
huge industry.
Yeah.
And it meant you could travel the world from London. You know, you could see all sorts of different cities and places and historical things. You could see battles and you could see revolutions, and it sounds unbelievably good.
And what's particularly beautiful about it is, so you do have the ones where it's old battle scenes, and the painters used to go and interview people of the area, and they would try and get the landscape. But for me, the most beautiful ones there was a panorama of Edinburgh, and what it was is he stood up, I think, with his son on Carlton Hill in Edinburgh. And so when you stand in the centre of this panorama, what you're seeing is literally the view absolutely perfectly matched for what you would see if you were standing in his shoes when he was painting it.
Yeah.
I just find that absolutely stunning
That
as
was his
a
first one.
concept. Yeah.
I mean, that is the premise of all paintings, really.
Yes,
is that
it
you're
really
seeing what
is.
the painter was seeing when they.
Yeah, but
Apart from abstract ones.
Oh God! I mean, yeah, but who
But the
really
sea
likes the
battle
abstract
ones that we're showing, that wasn't someone while everyone was falling out of their boats and everything was on fire going, sorry, can you just hold it for 1 minute?
Just stop.
Yeah.
Moving. The panoramas in general, they became huge. So Barker started this trend. He really quickly had imitators.
And he trademarked it, didn't he? Like, he tried to make sure that
did.
was his invention.
But then it ran out after
Yeah.
about a decade, and so then it was a complete free-for-all. There were panoramas everywhere. There was one in 1831 in Paris, which was about the Battle of Navarino, a naval battle, and the producer, this is so cool, he was called Charles Langlois, and he replaced the normal viewing platform that everyone would stand on in the middle and look around at the picture with the poop deck of a ship which had taken part in the Battle of Navarino.
Nice.
Ultra realistic.
That's clever.
Lovely touch.
He added ventilation to give a sea breeze, and he did all of this clever stuff to make it feel incredibly accurate.
Poop deck, of course, covered in channel changers, wasn't it? Yeah.
We covered very slightly ages ago about Banvard and that brilliant book, Banvard's Folly, which we always get asked about from listeners. But what that was those turnstile panoramas where it was basically a movie wrapped up, and you would turn it and it would be a moving, as if you were on a train and the view was passing you by, the painting would pass you by, and they would have sound and they would have smells, kind of like what you're saying with the other immersive thing, and you would watch that like a movie, which is amazing. And Banvard had one which was the Mississippi Valley, and it was a 3-mile canvas, 3-mile long canvas, he called it. It was actually half a mile when people properly looked into it. But all of this, which feels like it's such a shame that we don't have this anymore, these panoramic, rotundas. I think they'd be beautiful to go into. It was cinema that killed it. When cinema arrived, that just no one was interested anymore in seeing these
Were the
things.
panoramas still? I didn't know they were still going
They
at
were.
the turn of the 20th century.
Yeah,
they were still really popular.
They were still
Wow.
going, and basically the 1900 Grand Exhibition, which I think was in Paris, was the last. It was sort of the absolute apogee and the final grand hurrah of the panoramas. I was reading a really great book called Panorama, and it said that between 1870 and 1900, 100 million people around the world went to see panoramas. Although 100 million tickets were sold, maybe a lot of that was the same people, but a huge claim. Just on the kind of last hurrah of the panorama, the 1900 Grand Exhibition. So they got really, really fancy. Basically, they built and built and built, and there were all these. They were called Rama shows. So there was the Diorama, there was the Alporama, the Cosmorama, Europorama, Neorama,
Futurama.
Yeah, it developed in
Bananarama.
in 1900 in the Grand Exhibition. This sounds so good. The Mariorama. It's a me. Yeah, to find the princess. It was amazing. No, there were so 700 people got on the platform.
Yeah.
And then you would sail from Marseille to Yokohama. Okay, a huge long voyage, and I don't know how it revolved or moved around you, but
That's mostly sea, I would think.
it's all sea. Oh yeah, sorry, it's a
Oh,
complete
right.
sea voyage, but it's
It's quite an easy thing to paint, is what I'm saying.
Whoa!
You're absolutely right.
You're saying a bunch of sea is an easy thing to paint. Are you joining Dan in the please write in?
And if you're an ocean
Painters.
painter, if you're,
Turner, please get in touch.
no, you're right. Sorry, there were big sites along the way of Naples and the Suez Canal and Sri Lanka and things like that, and it sort of moved around you. And this is so cool. The air was blown through a layer of kelp to make it seem like the sea breeze was
That's so
blowing around
good.
you.
Just on vomiting and art,
Okay.
sickness and art. Do you guys know Millie Brown?
Doesn't sound familiar.
So she's friends with Lady Gaga, and so when she was 17 in the early 2000s, she was a young artist. She went on stage in Berlin doing some performance art, and she decided, hadn't tried it before, to try and vomit art onto a canvas. And she lined up 7 bottles of different coloured milk, dyed differently, and then the whole show is 2 hours of watching her throw it up.
I could have done that yesterday.
But no one would have paid to watch you. And
Well,
yet,
that's
with Millie,
the artificial barriers of the art world, frankly.
you're so right.
You know,
Exactly.
my
I
very-
often go to the Tate Mod and go, I could have done that.
My 5-year-old could have done that. I mean, literally could.
Just go to Leicester Square on a Saturday night and get the free Millie Brown show.
gosh.
All sorts of colours.
Wow, so what did she manage to do? Did she manage to do a nice picture of some flowers or perhaps a portrait?
It was a beautiful sort of impressionist-y water lilies, Monet-esque.
Lovely.
Yeah, it was a vomity mess, I suppose, but I'm sure it was very good. She said there was an old lady who was so moved that she left in tears.
Optical illusions?
Sure.
Just I was things that look different or make you feel weird. So if you're a footballer
Yeah.
and you score a goal,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
the next time you approach the goal, you perceive it as bigger than it is.
Right.
And if you take a shot on goal and you miss, the next time you perceive it as smaller.
Yeah. I watch a lot of basketball, and you read about that. A lot
Yeah.
of players saying that when they get on a run of 3-pointers, the basket, the rim, just feels
Absolutely.
like it's a bucket size. Like you just can't miss. It
Yeah.
just
Bucket size is actually smaller than a basketball ring. I think
that's-
Sorry,
the
is it?
average bucket.
Yeah, no, good point.
Hang on.
Yeah, a
You
little
can't-
garden bucket.
I'm sorry, Anna. I think you're really knowledgeable about loads of stuff. I don't think you know the size of the average bucket on Earth.
I'm imagining like a metal
I
bucket
think you're
used for
right. I
gardening.
think she's right. I think
It's
a rim is
smaller.
roughly.
No, I'm thinking of a paint bucket or a KFC bucket.
Also
Definitely,
smaller.
yeah.
That's small. That's smaller.
What's a bigger bucket?
Well, an ice bucket for the ice bucket challenge? Absolutely huge. Can be.
Okay,
But that
that's
tended
very
to just be a
yeah.
big, like, plastic box full
Yeah.
of water, usually.
Yeah.
That's a laundry basket.
What-
That's a
look,
basket.
You're thinking of a barrel.
I think we're all making my case for me, which is that a bucket is not a size.
When you take your kid to the beach, do you just take a giant, just dump them with this giant barrel-sized bucket, make a sandcastle, bitch?
I read one last thing. This is quite rude. It's quite recent as well. It's a news story. It's a guy who was he was at an optical illusion show with his girlfriend, and there was one room in it where you could do an illusion which made things look bigger, right? Now, he did what any funny young man
I've been
would
in one
do.
of those rooms. I know
Right.
the ones you mean. The person goes in one corner, and another person stands in the other corner, and one of them looks like a giant, and the other one looks tiny, right?
Right. And he obviously got his knob out and said, look how much bigger it is from here. And his girlfriend said, God, I can't take you anywhere. They were alone in the room.
Yeah.
What he didn't realise was that the image was being projected onto a screen in another room next door, which was full of people.
Oh no.
He was arrested for exposing himself.
my God.
Feels, I mean, that kind of half fair enough, but on the other hand, they should have told
should
him
have
that it
told
was
him.
being...
Definitely. You've got to be told if you think you're alone in a room. You can do any sort of thing.
Crazy.
I know, well, he was completely mortified. He was so worried about it for 2 years. He has ended up being officially admonished. But
I think that actually women shouldn't be allowed to walk past that illusion. On a Saturday, anyway.
I think Woking Golf Club should actually install one of those mirrors in the changing rooms. That's going to solve lots of issues. Okay, it's time for our final fact of the show, and that is James.
Okay, my fact this week is that when hyenas hunt, they often go for low-hanging fruit. They especially like buffalo testicles.
poor buffaloes.
Doesn't that make the buffaloes angry? And buffaloes are big.
Sure, but hyenas are quick.
Yeah, they are.
And vicious.
Then they've got
And
sharp
vicious.
teeth. Yeah.
So hyenas are famous for being scavengers, I think, mostly. But if you look into it, they are all-rounders, really. They do scavenge sometimes, but they also hunt a lot. And they especially hunt when they don't have anything to scavenge. So there's been a thing recently in Kenya where there have been fewer lions around. And because there are fewer lions, there's fewer dead animals for the hyenas to go after, and because a hyena can't really chase a gazelle because they're not fast enough, it's hard for them to catch big animals. They tend to go for things that are kind of easy for them to get, and according to this article I read, which was actually about the 2022 Kenyan election, weirdly enough, but in this article they said that there is a thing where they've been found to be grabbing the balls of buffaloes.
Wow.
Is it kind of on the go? As in, are they aiming to get the whole buffalo and they just settle for the balls? Or is it just...
I believe they go for a quick testicle and then leg it.
The thing is, their teeth are so sharp.
Yeah.
They're so fast at eating as well. They can just absolutely decimate their prey really quickly. I imagine the buffaloes might not even notice to begin with. Just to begin with, it's
you
just so
think?
quick. It's just like your balls are gone, and then it's like a few minutes later, like feels a bit loosey goosey down there. What's going on? Like that is just such a precision cut. No, no one.
If you're a buffalo and you're feeling sore,
They're amazing though. Like, so their teeth properly sharp. They can, and this is the spotted hyena. So we've got 4 species of hyena that are alive today. We used to have a lot more. In the fossil record, there was something like 70 different species of hyena. They are even finding ones now that were sort of in the Arctic, North Canada, where they didn't think they were before. They found teeth extracts and so on. So we're finding more
Polar
hyenas.
bear balls.
Yeah. But their teeth are so strong, they can chew through the skulls of elephants. Like, that's how... And they can digest things in ways that most other animals can't. So they can properly, they can digest bone. And
Yeah, they're the only things,
It's
really. The
extraordinary.
only mammals that can digest bone, one of the only mammals.
wow.
And, yeah, but they're bone crunching, and that's really good because it sort of recycles stuff on the savannah, and it, returns all those nutrients, all that good stuff in bone, like phosphorus and calcium goes into the soil. And they have white poo, so if you are looking around on the ground, you see some bright white poo, likely to be a
wow.
hyena around.
Are they dangerous to humans?
Well,
Oh,
if
they can hurt you.
you get your balls out.
Make it sound like a buffalo.
Yeah, not without my mirror. I'm not going to do that.
You're an amusing optical illusion thing. I think this will be really funny. I just want to say I find hyenas very gross. Personally, I know
Ooh, you're
Anna...
going to get letters.
You're
as
going to
well.
get
Well, I
letters
just,
from
they're,
the...
they're sort of pretty mean customers, and I know they have lots of good things about. Oh, they're
What
great.
don't
One
you
of
like
God's
about them?
creatures.
They're all God's creatures, but they just
I know they look weird and ugly. They're that weird sloping shape.
they make a horrible laugh.
They're in The Lion King, aren't they?
But they
Is
do
it?
make that horrible laugh.
They're pretty.
Yeah,
And
they
do you
do.
think they're kind of laughing at you?
They never do. Whenever I'm near them, that's the annoying thing. Like, I'm banging out some great material for them.
Yeah. That solo
Amazing.
show you took to the savannah was...
If you ever go to the zoo with Andy, hyenas are
Dead
pissing
silent.
themselves until Andy walks past and they go, "Oh, I preferred his old stuff."
Obviously, Andy's not alone in not liking hyenas, and we've talked before about the Lion King effect, not helping
Yeah.
their reputation as
I like
well.
them. I'm going to put it out there. I like them. I like
God.
a hyena.
Yes,
Yeah, all right. The kind of woke police comes along now. Dan Schreiber.
Wait, I thought you were saying you like them too, Anna.
Yeah, I'm not going to make a big deal of it. You know, I'm not
Wow.
going to just start a whole campaign.
That's what happens when you try
Yeah, you
try and do
can't
something
win.
nice, Dan. Yeah.
You
Don't
can't
bother.
win here. So the word mafisi means hyena in Swahili, but in Kenya it's also an insult. Like, it's also slang. I think it means something like shithead or shit for brains or
It's so
something.
weird that the people who know most about hyenas would have a negative word which also means hyena. Wow. Well, they're clearly misinformed, aren't they, Anna? I hope you go over and do a re-education tour.
There is something actually that they screw up for us, and that is if you are a paleoanthropologist. And so maybe you don't like them from this perspective, because this is people who are looking for evidence of hunter-gatherer humans, ancient humans, or proto-humans. And sometimes it's really hard to tell if humans have been somewhere or if hyenas have been somewhere, because they are the only two things that can break up bones. And so you'll find piles of animal bones that have been shattered or mostly devoured, and humans had stone tools with which they could smash up bones. Hyenas obviously can just chew through them. And scientists did an experiment to see how we can tell the difference. And they fed some bones to hyenas, and they gave some bones to humans with a hammer stones, and told them to smash them up. And you can't really tell the difference.
Wow.
That's so interesting. There is one interesting thing that hyenas can tell your paleo guys and girls, and that is that there might have been Neanderthals nearby, because hyenas were kept by Neanderthals as pets.
No.
So in the same way that humans had dogs for various different things, partnership or hunting or whatever, the Neanderthals had hyenas. And the thing is that a hyena is a type of cat. But it really fills in the niche of a dog. If you didn't know, you would think it was kind of a dog.
Yeah.
And it could be that that's why they exist, even because they're basically the Neanderthal dog, and the Neanderthals died out, but then the hyenas are still here.
And that's
Incredible.
why they really miss their owners, which is why they're so
Sad.
bad
I bet
tempered and sad.
they ate their owners. I bet that's why the Neanderthals died out. Actually, was because they had such incredibly
fair,
unfriendly dogs.
It's funny you say that. There was a find, I think last year, in a cave in Spain of Neanderthal bones, and they think they were eaten by hyenas.
Yes,
Oh, really?
no kidding.
I think
No
they might
kidding.
have sometimes turned on them.
I think they're just animals. They're just doing what they do, but they're unfriendly. They're not well disposed to
Well,
us.
they sort of arrive unfriendly as well, don't they? So hyenas, it's dominated by the females, their society, species, and when the mother is pregnant, in the later stages of pregnancy, there's a moment where sort of a lot of testosterone is released into the womb, and they basically just soak in it like a bath for the final stages of the pregnancy. And then when they come out, it's usually the female hyenas who really get more of this testosterone in them than the male the boy hyenas that are coming out. And so the females are like furious, like they're in there. The testosterone is going crazy in them. Their teeth are ready. They go born with their eyes open, and they're just ready to fight. And if the litter that the hyena has, if that's the correct term, is 2 girls, let's say, then those 2 will immediately see some food and just try and kill each other to make sure that they're the one who gets the dinner. Whereas if a boy comes out with a girl, then there's no fighting, because the boy's like, I'm not touching you. You're vicious. You're crazy.
These are Lion King ones. The ones that were animated in The Lion King,
Yeah.
they were based on some real hyenas. I mean, obviously they're based on hyenas, but in fact we know specifically which hyenas they were based on. And these are the hyenas from Berkeley, California. Classic Hollywood.
I was going to say, do you think they go back to their pack and they're sort of I'm the famous hyena, but if they're already living in Berkeley, then
They're already
They've all been
completely
in
out of
something.
themselves.
Yeah.
They've all been in something. They're on the bone smoothies. There was this research centre in Berkeley which had 30 hyenas living in it, and they were being studied by brilliant research scientists. And I read a great piece all about this research centre. One of the keepers of the hyenas, who was interviewed in this article, she was called Mary Weldeller. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I'm sure I'm not. But when the guy who's writing the piece goes and speaks to her, he notices that Mary had a really peculiar thumb. And you know why she had such a peculiar thumb?
Was she part hyena? A very small part hyena.
Exactly right.
it trapped it in a door.
It's more related to what I'm saying. Right. She had a very peculiar looking thumb.
Had it been eaten by a hyena?
It was her big toe. And the reason was because her original thumb had been bitten off by a hyena. And so they had to replace it with her big toe.
Well, I bet she aggravated it. I bet she gave it a thumbs down for something. She wasn't happy. We've said there are 4, or you said, Dan, there are 4 species of hyena.
I did.
And yeah, you say that they are more closely related to cats than to dogs, but they're actually just their own, they're not even their own species, they're their own family. They're so different to anything else. And each hyena species is in its own genus. I think the spotted hyenas get all the most press, and they are the ones who do the most hunting. So actually they hunt most of the food they eat. They actually get more of their kills stolen by lions than the other way around.
Oh, do they?
But my favourite hyenas are aardwolves,
Yeah.
which get not that much press. And aardwolves are the 4th species which only eat insects. And they're quite slow
Whoa.
and quite crap at fighting.
They only eat the testicles of ants. So
They have to get down really low. They're very good at limbo.
Yeah.
God, I've heard of an aardwolf, but I did not know it was a kind of hyena.
No, I didn't either.
And now
Yeah.
I've gone right off them. No, yeah.
Well, bad news, Andy, because I know you don't want hyenas strolling the streets of Britain, and they can't, according to the Dangerous Wild Animals Act of 1976.
Right.
You're not allowed to have a pet hyena, but you are allowed to have a pet aardwolf.
Oh.
Specifically, in the law, it says all hyenas are banned except for the aardwolf.
No way, because
Wow.
they're safe.
Well, because all they do is eat termites.
Have you guys seen a photo of one? Do they look like a hyena? Are
Yeah.
they sort of indistinguishable? Same height, same size?
Yeah, I would say they
do.
look. All 4 species look a bit different, but very similar to each other.
Right.
But they have like really long tongues, like an aardvark
Cool.
does, for instance.
Yeah. Basically, their only way of defending themselves, one of the only ways, is they secrete this substance from their anal glands, which is really disgusting. And actually, we don't know. It could be defense, or it could be to mark their territory or tell other hyenas where they are. And according to, there was a book on African mammals I was reading, which explained how they wipe their substances on the ground, and they straddle a grass stalk, and then they rapidly squat, I think up and down, on this grass stalk while everting their anal pouch, and it wipes this smear. So you know if they've been around, you can see a little smear of their
Lovely.
presence. Do you know the hyena men in Nigeria?
No.
These are traditional storytellers, but their main trick seems to be, there are a few of them, they're itinerant, they never stay in one place more than a couple of days, and their main thing is they have sort of pet hyenas, and their job, I think, is to sell kind of powders and potions that can, cure you of things. And they have these pet hyenas, and what they do is they beat drums to attract crowds, and then the crowds come, and then they put their arms and their heads inside hyenas' jaws and show, look, it didn't bite my head off, and that's because I've used this powder. Why don't you buy some powder? Then it won't bite your head off.
What is the reason? They've just domesticated the hyenas.
Yeah, or maybe sometimes they do bite their heads off, but you don't hear about those.
Or it's an
now, do you?
aardwolf.
Or it's an aardwolf.
Just dressed as a hyena.
Yeah.
It just licks inside your ear with its long tongue.
Wow, that's great. Hyenas go on a diet during Lent in Ethiopia, specifically.
That's amazing.
They
It's a Catholic. Is it a Catholic country? Ethiopia?
It's very
I think it
Christian.
is.
Very
It's
Christian.
And
Yeah, sorry.
In Ethiopia, there's constant fasting in the Christian
Yeah.
community,
Oh, really?
so I guess they're subscribing to that.
Well, this was, again, a study done by a scientist called Gaidi Yirga and colleagues who analysed 553 hyena scats before, during and after the period of Lent in Ethiopia. And what they found is that basically, during Lent, the butchers aren't selling meat because people aren't eating meat as much, right? So that's a problem. Hyenas don't have as much scavenging to do, so they hunt donkeys instead.
All right, they don't say, oh, you know what? For Lent, I'm going to give up buffalo testicles just for the 40 days, and then...
Quite the reverse. It's really bad to be a donkey during Lent in Ethiopia because the odds of you being eaten by a hyena rocket.
Right.
And because they basically they analysed all the hyena feces and they found that donkey hair proportion in the feces shoots up more than doubles during the Lenten period.
That's a real
So-
slap in the face, isn't it? Because as the creature that brought the Virgin Mary into Bethlehem to give birth to
Took
Christ our
into-
Saviour,
and took Christ into
On Palm Sunday,
Palm
wasn't he?
Sunday.
when he arrived on
Yeah.
a donkey. Yeah.
what? And you're the one who's getting punished at Lent of all times.
There's irony.
There's
Yeah,
irony.
no wonder they're so bloody gloomy all the time.
That's what Eeyore's thinking about all the time. isn't he?
I missed that bit of the 100-acre wood where Eeyore gets eaten by a hyena.
Okay, that's it. That is all of our facts. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to get in contact with any of us about the things that we've said over the course of this podcast, we can all be found on our Twitter accounts. I'm on @Schreiberland, James,
At James Harkin.
Andy,
At Andrew Hunter M.
and Anna.
You can email podcast@qi.com.
Yep, or you can go to our group account, which is @NoSuchThing, or our website, nosuchthingasafish.com. All of our previous episodes are up there. Do check it out. Also, check out Club Fish, the secret membership club. Not so secret, you can just join it. Anyone can, and you should. It's really fun. You get bonus content. There's a really cool community hidden away in Discord where all the fans get together and chat about their favorite things. It's really, really fun. Have a look. But otherwise, just come back here next week. We'll be back with another episode. We'll see you then. Goodbye.